Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pianist Academy. I'm Charles Szczepanek. It's great to see you for another live stream today. Wonderful. Welcome, Rotsi. You were here early. And Jess, welcome. Nico, good to see you. And Whitney, Lori, Nancy, Lisa, Bethany, Nathanael, Joey. Lisa, thank you for that comment about the opening arrangement. I appreciate that. Now, some of you saw the post when this posted yesterday, or if you found a link to this post yesterday in a various Facebook page, it said today was going to be a completely open Q&A session, and that changed about an hour ago. Nathanael sent in, I can't always do this, but Nathanael, you caught me on a day where I had a little extra time. Nathanael sent in a little performance of a Bach Little Prelude, and Nathanael has a performance coming up of that prelude this weekend. So we're going to take a listen to his rendition of this Bach and see what we can do with the few days you've got. Okay. Rhodesy, you say you played Stravinsky's Play El Piano the other day. Very, very cool. Very cool. Also, one other comment, right, before we get started. If you haven't, many of you that are here, I appreciate you coming to the live streams a ton. And I know sometimes I see you around comments in videos or on the rest of the channel. I've been posting quite a lot of content for me, about 2 to 3 times a week. And if you haven't seen some of the new content, please go check it out. There's stuff on practicing with the metronome. Put that in air quotes. When you watch the video, you'll know why. Hello, June. Hello, David. Gosh, what else has come out recently? There's one video coming out. Hey, Rhodesy, thank you. There's one coming out this Friday that I know, Joey, you're going to be interested in because it's talking about how complex pedaling is using Debussy's first arabesque. And so that's going to be a fun one to watch. Anyway, there's a lot of content coming out on the channel, and if you haven't seen it, go check it out. There might be a lot of stuff you're interested in. Rhodesy, I'm not going to do channel memberships on YouTube, but you gave me an opportunity to pitch. I have a whole new community program over on Thinkific where you can sign up to be a member, and you can get access to all of my courses, and there are private workshops. We just had one yesterday that was 3 hours long, and there's a lot more stuff. Anyway, there's a link to that in the description below. So, Rhodesy, thanks for giving me an opportunity to pitch that. Lisa, you say you love the video about practicing, the latest one about interleaved practicing, I'm assuming. And you say, is that for master's students or can adult amateurs benefit? Absolutely, adult amateurs can benefit. It's not just for students at an extremely high level. In fact, I think it'll help you progress much faster if you use it. I don't even think there is a level that's too low or too beginner to use interleaved practice. The biggest thing we need to watch out for is that we know the piece that we're doing that with pretty well. We shouldn't use it too early in learning, whatever it is that we're learning new. And that might change as you become more and more proficient with the instrument. You might be able to start using interleaved practice sooner and more quickly in the learning process. So if you're at a really early beginner level, I wouldn't use that until you've got things really nicely under control, and then you can use it to put the last 10% of polish on something and make it extra secure. And as we continue progressing, then you might be able to start that earlier. I think in that video I mentioned the piece that I demonstrate with, I had 12 days to prepare it for the recording session, and 50% of the way in, on day 6 out of 12, I started using interleaved practice. Anyway, I think that's the only limit, as we don't want to use it so early that it confuses the brain. Yeah, that's the point, is to challenge the brain, not to confuse it. Rhodesy, I have a tiny bit of verb. It shouldn't be overly much. I've noticed that there's a little bit of echo between my voice here and the mics that are in the piano. So I can't do anything about that because it's an acoustic instrument. Lewis, welcome. Bethany, that sounds great about the soft pedal video. Thanks for checking it out. Nancy, awesome. I'm glad to hear you're going to join the Next Level Pianist Academy group. Awesome. And cool. Okay, wonderful. Well, it's great to see so many of you here. We're going to jump into, if you haven't had a chance to say hi, by the way, I see there's many of you here. We have 29 currently watching. If you haven't said hi in the chat, please say hi. If you haven't been here before, please definitely say hi and let us know where you're tuning in from. And without further ado, we're going to take a listen to Nathanael's performance of this Bach Little Prelude in E major. So let me get that queued up. Hello, is it germicidal? And Newt boy, hello. Thanks for India. Well, welcome. Thanks for taking me up on that. I appreciate that. Oh, my coffee's very hot this morning. All right, let me cue up Nathanael's performance and let's take a listen. All right, let's give Nathanael a round of applause in the chat. Nathanael, that was very nice. Thanks, Whitney. And Lori says, well done. Absolutely. So, Nathanael, when Nathanael emailed me, you said that you have a performance of this, a live performance coming up on Saturday, I believe. First of all, I would just like to say that you are in great shape to give that performance. So congratulations on a job well done to prepare. I think everything's it's good. For all of us, there's always room to make things better, right? And so we'll tackle a couple little things that I think that you would have time to work on between now and Saturday. Not so much that it's overwhelming, just a couple little things that might add an extra level of polish to your performance, okay? Yeah. So just first of all, congratulations. You've done a good job preparing. Let's dive into my first question for you is about two things. You're using the score as you play. Are you going to be using the score in the performance, Nathanael? Or does it have to be memorized? Personally, there's no judgment either way from me. I'm a big fan of using the score. And maybe some of you have seen the recent article that's floating around from Simone Dinnerstein about using score in performance. It's a great one to check out if you haven't. So Nathanael, great. You say you will use the score. Okay, good. Let's then talk about there was a little skip, a little hiccup in your performance on the second page. I was taking some other notes, so I didn't quite get the spot circled during your run through. My question is, does a little hiccup happen there often? Is that a normal spot? Or was it just in today's run through? Do you have hiccups like that happen in different places as you go through the piece? I'll give Nathanael a second to respond to that. Newt Boy, just summing up a couple, Bethany said, great job. Lisa gave applause. Wonderful. Joey clapped. Yes. Newt Boy, you said, hands look good. Lack of tension. I agree with all of that. Okay. Nathanael said, a few weak spots, but also random errors. Nathanael, have you had a chance to check out my Interleaved practice video on the channel that posted last week? If you haven't, go check that out and do some numbering of your score. I know that you sent me a copy of it, of your actual score, that I'm assuming the markings in it are your teachers. Yeah. Okay, so Nathanael, I would go through and number phrases in your score. I could even maybe do that together with you today. And you can copy them down and work from there. And then practice starting at all those points randomly, right? Just like the video describes. That can really help to bridge that gap between some random errors that happen that we can't always predict, right? If we have an error that happens in the same place every time we perform something, then there's something specific, something about that spot, technique, some misalignment. There's something, or a lack of memory. There could be something that we didn't quite learn the right way or the best way possible that we can tackle about that one bar. But if things happen randomly, that's usually a sign that maybe we lost a tiny bit of focus for a second. Maybe we forgot to check in with something. Maybe we used a wrong finger, not in the passage where the mistake happened, but before. Nathanael, yeah, you say, would you do 2-bar segments? Why don't we tackle this first? Let me see if I can go through and number this for you. 2-bar segments might be okay. But let's take a look together. I didn't download the score with your teacher's marks, which, by the way, they're very good. So congrats on having a great teacher. I'm going to play with some different articulations than what's marked in your score, Nathanael, but the articulations that you have marked are good, and you're following them, so congratulations. You're following the slurs where they're marked, and you're following the staccato detached articulation. So let's see about the end. Remember, like we talked about in that video, we're going to number 1 toward the back of the piece and ascend from there. So... yeah. That's a good spot. 19 is good. Sure. So that'll be our number 1. And it looks like 17 will be our number 2. Yep. So I knew that so quickly because I'm looking for where the material is transitioning from 8th notes or the theme, right? So we have 8th notes here in the right hand, and then they transition to the left. That's the biggest sign I'm looking for as I choose these. Now, in 15 and 16, these phrases are 1 bar apiece, or the 8th notes are 1 bar apiece. But it's more like a call and response between 2 parts. So, yes, 15 will be number 3. This is looking good so far. Now, I'm actually going to number this one differently. Number 4 is going to be here. I think. Yeah, let's do that one differently because I think it would be great for you to practice hearing this connecting to 13. Which then also means that this number 5 is just going to be 1 bar long. Hello, Johan. And hello, C Drive. You're not very, very late. Okay, let's go back a page and continue on. Whoops. Okay, here we go. Yep. Okay, so I see. The previous page we left off on 5. So the bottom here, bar 9 is going to be number 6. Yes, bar 7 is going to be number 7. That's convenient. Bar 5 will be number 8. Dun, 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 dun. Yep, and then 9 and 10 for bar 1. Okay, so Nathanael, you could copy those down on your score, starting with 10 and going back down to 1, just like we talk about in the video on interleaved practice. Pull out random sections and play that one section. For example, let's jump to the second page. You could play measure 5. You could play, not measure 5, number 5 to the beginning of number 4, like to the downbeat, especially because in this piece, the theme resolves to the downbeat. And the new themes always begin, just like your teacher marked, on the second eighth note. So the resolution of the phrase is here, right? So practice through into at least the first note of the new number. Yep. And secondly, you could always say, I'm going to play number 5 into part of number 4, or number 5 into all of number 4. We didn't talk about that in the interleaved video. You could definitely group passages together. So when you randomly generate the numbers, and you don't have to work on all of them in one sitting, right? You could take half of them and say, I'm going to work on all the even numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And those would be your spots. And when you do that, you could even say, I'm going to play from that even number through the following odd number, and I'll take those as chunks too. So that's a form of using interleaved practice that I didn't talk about in the video, but it uses the same numbering system, and we're still practicing them randomly. Okay, Nathaniel, that should help to alleviate some of the little hiccups that you're experiencing. And do this, if you have time, do it randomly throughout the day. It's really great, while you're practicing, have the timer, and then when the timer goes off, play some stuff. You could also, if you are at home, or if you have time in the morning and at night, you could say, I've got 10 minutes. I can run through numbers 1 through 5, and I could do it right now. Just completely apart from everything else. And I don't mean in order. Again, I mean randomly if you want to. And then later on, when you haven't been practicing, come back to the piano and say, I got 5 minutes. I can run these other numbers. Okay? So it doesn't have to just be during that time. Especially preparing for a performance, it could be really great to challenge yourself that when you haven't been at the instrument, come, sit down, focus your mind, and then play. You can also take some time to do some standard performance practice, like do this again, come to the piano in the evening. You haven't practiced maybe yet today or in 12 hours, and just sit down and say, I'm going to run the piece, and do a practice performance of the whole thing. Okay? Those would be great things to help you prepare. Now, let me give you a couple. We're going to limit this to just a couple things to think about. You mentioned in your email that you are not quite happy with how it sounds. Can you describe what the components that you're least happy with? I'd like to hear from you first, so to understand how you are assessing your performance, and then we can chat about that. Neil, Neil, good to see you. Thanks for the comment. Okay, so Nathaniel, you said the legato and the slurs that you have marked in your score are not sounding good. Okay, Nathaniel, let's be more specific with what isn't good about them. So, I would say your legato, the legato itself, which is purely the connection, let's talk about legato at the most basic level. Just your connection of one note to the next. is fine. You said phrasing can be better. Okay. I would say your legato was fine. At a basic level, the connection is fine. Phrase is connected to legato here. Yeah. And I do agree your phrasing can be better. But how can it be better? If we just say it could be better, that doesn't leave us... It leaves us wondering, well, what do we do? What do we do to make a difference? So here are a couple suggestions to help make that difference, Nathanael. Let's start at the beginning of the piece. Think about and start thinking about Bach as having tiered dynamics. So there's a big difference between playing, showing a dynamic change through a phrase in a romantic sense, which might be... That's a very romantic phrase, and we might not want to do that playing Bach. But we can still show tiered dynamics in Bach, which helps to give phrases some more life. So let's just look at the first two bars. And we have our highest pitch is an E, and our lowest pitch is the octave below. The higher the pitch, the more dynamic we can give. So, notice that's much different than the very legato, overly legatoed, maybe legatissimo romantic version. And also, where the dynamic changes is very different. So this is a Baroque change in dynamic that we can actually execute on the piano. Yep. So think about that. You can go through each phrase. Even better, we just isolated that one phrase by itself. But throughout the entire, throughout all of the main themes, especially per part, so if we call it soprano and bass, when does the soprano part go higher than E? Higher than the note, but only in the theme. We're not going to count, because if we bring that out, we're going to totally cover up what we do want to hear in the other hand. So, do we go higher than E? A little bit. Let's see. Bar 8, we have F sharp. So I'm looking for the highest pitches and the lowest pitches to give a scale for these tiered dynamics. Next page. Measure 13. Those are great. Those are really big climactic moments in this piece. Yes. So now we have that as well. So we know that E that we get in bar 1 and bar 2, that's in the soprano, is not the highest we will achieve. We need to leave room to show tiered dynamics through measure 13. And things calm down a little bit. Go through that also for the bass voice. So that's one thing. Secondly, let's talk. Rhodes a great melody line, yeah. And hello, Antonio. Let's talk a little bit about showing where phrases and where the theme begins and where the most important line transitions between the hands. So we established when we talked about this before, just like in bar 1, this is the bar that establishes it. The theme is presented with an 8th rest at the beginning of the bar. That means the theme and related material is always going to begin, most likely always going to begin on the and of 1. So 1. Yep. Now, let's move from bar 1 and 2 into 3, where the theme truly begins. Here on that F sharp, the D in the left hand is not the beginning. It's the end of the 16th notes from the previous bar. So I would do more to bring out that change dynamically. Bring it out in the left hand. Yeah. So that we're really hearing that difference and hearing it come through the texture. The other thing, and we have to be very careful with this, but you're at a point where you can add it in, is the slightest, ever so slightest breath right before the change in theme from between registers happens. Let me see if I can play it for you. Starting in 1, so we establish the main theme at the beginning. Whoops. That was a hair too much time, but I'm trying to show a gap here, and not just a gap in articulation, not just a separation. And I know your teacher marked legato through the theme, right? But don't just show the change in articulation, but just the tiniest fraction of a moment breath helps to offset that theme and draw our ear to it. And that can provide a lot of interest. And guess what? I wouldn't do this every time it happens, because the theme and the part our ear is drawn to is always changing hands and changing registers. But choose opportunities. This is a great one because this is where the main theme is repeated for the first time. We have it in bar 1, and then we have it in bar 3. So plan a couple spots where you could just have a slightest breath to show that little bit of separation. That is how a Baroque era keyboard player would have shown a little bit more separation, because we couldn't do it with dynamic necessarily. If it was played on an organ, maybe we couldn't change stops in the middle for sure. There wouldn't be a lot we could do except separate in time the end of one idea, the end of we'll call it an accompanimental idea in counterpoint, and the beginning of the theme, presented in a different way. So a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of time. Be careful that doesn't turn into, for example, that's way too much time. Way too much. Don't do that. That was just a hair out of tempo. And that hair out of tempo makes worlds of difference when we use it in small amounts. Yeah? Gabrielle, well, hello. You say all quavers in Bach are staccato. They don't have to be. Many, many people play Bach in that way. But you can choose different articulations. It's a great starting point, is to, yes, show that difference in articulation between... we can really show that difference and the difference in voice. Very often, what Bach wants our ear to be drawn to will be the slower rhythm, not the fast rhythm. But, and Nathanael's example, I don't have his teacher's writing to show on screen today, but just to play a more advanced interpretation of Bach. So what Nathanael's teacher marked for him was legato through the opening of the theme, and then staccato, or detached more like, through the second half of the theme. And that's really nice, as long as we be sure that once we establish that, we continue that throughout the piece. If you hear, for example, Glenn Gould has a recording of this, and it's, of course, very fast, something like... something around that tempo. And he shows little slurs and accents in very different places. They're also, I don't agree with his tempo, but his articulations are really, really wonderful. Yeah? So on the keyboard, I always urge people when you play Bach, don't just think about it as a keyboard piece. Think about it as if it's played by string instruments, especially. Oh, I know, phase. Uh-oh. So how would a string player play this? We're not going to go into this. This really, Nathanael, this part isn't for you. Don't change your articulation. You're doing a great job. But you absolutely, a string player could play da 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 da, and show more dynamic in there and show different slurs. That's always an option. The only thing that's kind of a no-no is to just play everything with the same articulation. We definitely never want to play staccato in the fast parts of Bach. It just should be light and flowing, right? And if we always play this legato or the 16th notes, for example, in Bach, and then we play eighths, also always legato. That's not a very good interpretation. So that's the one rule to avoid, kind of at all costs. Okay. So Nathanael, you say best place is beginning of measure 15 and 11 to take breath. So we talked about measure 3. That's the first point. I would take a little bit of a breath because it's a statement of the main theme. And maybe don't take any breath in 5, where that theme ends and we get... Because now if we're transitioning one bar and one bar between the registers, between the hands, there's going to be too many pauses if we show breath there. And then... We don't need to show it in 7 because we're coming from something completely different. So when the main theme comes back... No, pause. And then let's see. Let's say 9 and 10. I would play both voices equally out. So no pausing through there. No, pause is the wrong word. No breath. Now, you said 11. 11, we don't need to take any time there either because we've just gone through an ending. So, if we structure the ending nicely, that's going to give enough separation for us to hear this new statement. No time. Here's something. Every one of these big skips in 13, bum bum ba, da 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 da. Don't even think about that as breath. Just think about placing those two high pitches. So instead of it being da 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 da, where we move straight through, show how big the leap is with just the tiniest little gap again. It's very, very, very small. Okay? And then you said 15. I think 15 is a great spot. Yes. And then probably not again for the entire rest of the piece. Yes. Laura, you say your Busoni has interesting markings for this piece. So leggero, lightly but marked. Busoni is always interesting. I like it as a starting point to work on Bach. I like it for students that don't have a lot of experience with Bach already. I like using Busoni's additions. I think they can give us a great starting point. But obeying everything that's in there, if there are ornaments written in, they are probably not correct for the period. So I wouldn't follow Busoni's ornaments. And some of the way he structures accents and phrase is overly romanticized. So we just need to be careful. I really like that usually Busoni gives a great analysis of the theme and shows one possible set of articulations that can be used. And it's usually a wonderful starting point. Then we just need to be sure that we're not taking it too far and out of the Baroque context. Yeah. Yes, and like you said, Lori, yeah. Starting with Henley, where there's nothing, and that's what I'm showing, by the way, there's nothing on the score, that's tough. If you don't have a teacher to help navigate that for you, that's really tough. Nathanael, one more tip for you. So we've spent a bit of time talking about this, but these are things that I think just a little bit of practice can go a really long way for you. So we're not reworking any parts of the piece. We're not changing your articulations. We're doing a little bit of highlighting some spots. We're working on a little bit more dynamic change through the phrase and maybe bringing out, especially where a theme transitions to the left hand, bringing that out more. The last bit is paying attention to the harmony that you're playing. So we're in E major, starting back at the beginning. Oops. Well, this is predictable. We started in E, and now we have the 5 chord B. And this is still fairly predictable. But this is not. So, that's measure 5. I'm going to clear all my other markings so it's a little easier to see that. Measure 5, right in the middle of the screen. Listen to the extra dissonance. This would have been dissonant in Bach's time, because now we're moving from F sharp, major, F sharp dominant 7 to G sharp dominant 7, cadencing in, sounds like it's going to be C sharp minor, and it's immediately changed to A major. Really cool. But this, that is a really cool harmony. That's a really interesting harmony. If you just think about the fact that it's interesting, you are probably going to play it with a little bit more focus and more intensity, and that's going to be all you need to bring out the little change in color. Yes, so that's one spot in these opening bars, and then we go back to more predictable harmony. This is still quite predictable. Good. So we have one spot that we can do a little extra highlighting of on the first page. Great. Look at the second page. Nothing crazy yet. We've already talked about bringing out the leaps in the right hand, so we're not going to look anywhere else quite yet. We don't need multiple things to draw focus. But that one does align, just so you hear it, with a great harmonic change. And then, accidental. That's the first time, I believe, in the piece that we get a D natural, not the D sharp that's present in the key. So as soon as we hit beat 2 in measure 14, so nice and different, unpredictable. Now, we've cadenced in a different key, and that D natural sets that up. to change and to tonicize a different key here. So that's another spot. So Nathanael, you said lingering ever so slightly on those dissonant harmonies. No, let's maybe not. I wouldn't program that in yet, because we were programming in a slight hesitation to show the theme. So we don't want to confuse showing the theme and having the ear drawn there with the change in harmony. Like I said, I would just think about and listen to how unexpected it is. And it's hard for us, but if you could put yourself in Bach's shoes, or in the shoes of someone listening to this in that time, before all of the rest of the lovely and glorious dissonance that we've gotten used to with music that's been written after, those moments would be like, wow, they would be so incredible listening some 300 years ago. So, yeah, just listen for them. And I think that's all the attention they need. Because if you put your focus there, it's going to change just a little bit. And that little bit, that's all we're looking for. We're not looking to romanticize the interpretation. We don't want to do anything that is maybe would be considered grotesquely exaggerated for Bach. We don't want to do that. So just draw your focus. And just let's continue for a second. Now we're getting back to normal very quickly. I cannot remember how big of a retard you're showing at the end of the piece, but I think you can take something that's fairly large. Let's see if I can play these last two bars. Something like that would be good. Again, this isn't a romantic retard. So it's a very linear slowing in time, not a big sweeping slowing down. It's not overly emotional. Let me just try to show it again. I think that would be nice. And just cap off the piece for us. I cannot remember if you did something like that in your performance. So apologies if you're doing it already. Nathanael, I know we spent maybe about 40 minutes on this, but I promise those three things, they just boil down to tiered dynamics, the sense of time in showing where the theme moves, and listening for the color of interesting harmonies. Especially ones that are outside the key that we're playing in. And you can usually find those if you look for the accidentals on the page. Where are they given? Extra sharps that aren't there, naturals, yeah. But Nathanael, all that said, I think if you spend just a little bit of time working each one of these components between now and Friday, do what you can, and it'll be even better for Saturday. But I do think, really, really, truly, I think you're going to have a great performance on Saturday. And I think you've done really wonderful work so far on this piece. Yeah. Let's give Nathanael another round of applause because, yeah, really, really good stuff. Nathanael, just for everybody's sake, how long have you been studying this piece? And I'm assuming this is your first performance of it. Are you going to also be taking an exam for this? Is it a part of your studies, for example, in the RCM leveling system, or is it not? Yes, clap, clap, Newt boy. Wonderful. Thanks so much, everybody, for sharing that. Applause. Yeah. Whitney says, good luck. Absolutely. Faze says, rock on. Love it. Oh, Beat Booker. Hey, good to see you. I'm just giving Nathanael a second to type in if he's writing a couple things. Here we go. You said about 3 months. Wonderful. Nathanael, really wonderful work for 3 months. Great stuff. Yeah. Very good. I would have been... I know I'm not your regular teacher, but I also would have been very proud of you if you had said 6 months. I think you're doing great. So wonderful, especially 3 months. That's quite a short amount of time to be working this Bach, and to be, especially with the command you have over the differences in articulation between the hands. Really nice. Great. Okay, the whole rest of the session is open. By the way, I do need to... Oh, this is exciting to share with everybody. We are not going to go 2 hours today, so I'm sorry about that. But it is because I am touring the new Steinway showroom in Denver this afternoon, which I'm very excited to go do. And I need to leave here soon after. I need to grab a quick bite to eat earlier than I usually do. So we're going to go for an additional 45 minutes here. And then, I don't know if I'll film anything, but I'm very excited to go and meet the people at Steinway. B. Booker, I was that jealous of Nathanael or my trip to Steinway? Newt Boy, you left a question earlier. So all that to say, the rest of the session is open. If you've got questions, let's type them in the chat, and I will get to as many as I possibly can. Newt Boy, you said using blocking. So, Newt Boy, I'm assuming... B. Booker, thanks. Newt Boy, I'm assuming... Do you have a copy of my practicing course? Because the blocking video, I didn't release publicly. That was an additional module I just filmed for the practicing course. Oh, awesome. Okay, great. So, Newt Boy, what Newt Boy is asking about is a video on blocking, which is different than blocked practice. So blocking is taking music that we see across a measure or across time and reading it very quickly, because we learn how to take it from a horizontal and stack it into one item, one harmony. And you asked, is that how I'm able to sight read this so quickly? Yes, it is. That's all of that kind of stuff, even though I'm not practicing it in a blocked way. Sorry, blocking. If we go back to the piece, I see E major, F sharp, minor, E back to E major, dum da da dum 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 da da da. That's scalar. Everything here, yeah, very related to E major, and then starting here, a scale down. And then once again, related to E major, but a scale in the lower voice. So I'm seeing all of that. I'm trying to read it. There's a few too many notes for me to read the entire bar in advance. But to about 2 beats or so at a time, I'm looking at that and analyzing what is presented and does it fit a pattern that I know already. And that's basically what blocking is. So going to the next bar, B, C sharp, more scalar in nature, but again, scalar in B. Once right hand also in B. This is a little easier to sight read than some of the other Bach, because the voices and the hands are working in the same harmony. They're not predicting other things, and there aren't too many non-chord tones. And if they are passing tones, they're very diatonic for the most part. So that makes it a little easier. Yes, Lisa, you said it's a language. Yes, absolutely. It is a, yes. 100%. Oh, Joey. Yeah, you say Steinway Factory. Good memories. I visited before Steinway moved. I visited and actually performed at Steinway Hall, which is they have a little concert space that was, I can't remember what avenue it was, 40 something in Manhattan. That was a lot of fun. They had this big Steinway D sitting, and it was like the audience on my right was further away than the people on the sidewalk outside the building in New York City. And so I was playing with a bunch of other people at a music festival. And it was kind of surreal to have people like on their phones walking by outside and stop. Some people would stop and they'd be right up against the glass. Like I could reach out and almost touch them. They were, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet to my left. And the audience in the space was like 10 to 15 feet that way. But yeah, you said Steinway Factory and that just reminded me. Let's see, Newt Boy, you said that suggests you practice chords and practicing chords and inversions is essential. Yes. Most people practice, learning how to make your way around the keyboard in any chord, in any inversion, arpeggiating it, playing it in any voicing, truly. That's a maybe fancier word for inversion. Let's riff on that for a second, and then David, I'll come back to your question. So let's talk about E major. We were just playing a whole bunch of stuff in E. Okay, what I just played wasn't written anywhere in that piece, but I know this is a voicing in E major. It happens to be root position, but I'm not playing root position in the right hand. But I know that's E major because I know the chord and I know all of its inversions. We'll call those inversions in closest position. Right? If I play something like this, that's the same inversion, no longer in closest position. It's the same inversion because of the lowest pitch. Not because it's built this particular way, but because of the lowest pitch. Now if I play this, which is E major in first inversion, and I add an E on the bottom, it's now E major in root position, truly. And if I play this, that's E major in root position, but if I play this, that's E major in first inversion because of the lowest pitch. So at a certain point, you stop thinking about this as root position and this as first inversion, this as second. It's great to know, but those turn into possible ways to voice the chord. Just like this is a possible way to voice the chord, just like this is. Just like, that is, or can't reach that one really, but that would be another way. Or this one. Those are all possible ways to voice the chord that are not condensed to the closest. And we can add that to anything else in the left hand. So just playing around with E major, and you can all do this to practice. How many different ways can you come up with to build that chord? Here's one, here's one, here's one. And how about this? How about that one? How about that one? How about an arpeggio in the left hand with a blocked chord in the right hand? So different arpeggio now. So different blocked chord, different arpeggio. Started in a different inversion, but then also the pattern I played wasn't just going up. This was the standard arpeggiation I played in that first chord. But then here, I'd skipped around, and then I alternated directions coming down. So, yes, that was one chord. How many different ways you can do this in practice? Pick a chord every day in practice, if you have time. I would do this, after you play some scales and arpeggios, pick a chord, just one, and start to come up with how many different ways can it be voiced. Start with your basic inversions, and then move from there. Do both hands in those basic inversions, and then start to combine them. You could play that. That's root position in the left hand, first inversion on the left. start to combine them in different ways. How about this one? And then start to break out of that closest position voicing to bigger voicings that span an octave. So that's open, not E major, but open. Sounds like E major because we've just played the G sharp a lot. But this one, how about the one on B? How about some low voicings? Yep. Jose, you say, do I prefer playing fast arpeggios with one or two hands? If I'm composing, usually one, not often with both, unless there's a really specific reason. And if I'm playing someone else's work, I usually don't have a choice. And if I were practicing technique, then I would do both hands together simultaneously. I'm just going to make progress with both hands much more quickly than if I do one hand at a time. It's going to take half the time because I need to do half the number of repetitions. Oh, Joey, great to see you here. Okay. David. So let's jump back to David's question. David, you said you don't know how to execute con moto. Is it a mood like con gusto or animato, or in the middle of a piece does it mean faster? Good. David, do you have I'm guessing this is coming from a particular piece and a particular measure. If I can find it and pull it up, I will. Hey, Kale. So David, with if it doesn't, I would say con moto is more of a mood than a tempo change. Animato is more of a mood than a tempo change. Più mosso, which would be more motion rather than with motion, would be more in line with a tempo change, or just a feeling of pushing forward more quickly. So if it's if you have a piece that says con moto or con mosso, and it's in the tempo mark, next to allegro con moto. Sure, quickly and with movement or with motion. Then the tempo is set by the allegro and the feel is set by con moto. So I would be focusing on our sense of how sweeping and how much forward movement are we feeling within a line? Are we feeling that the music is it's not in a cello rondo, so the tempo isn't moving forward, but do we feel that forward momentum, and do we feel a lot of it? Depending on the actual tempo mark, you might be able to think of a word like breathless, like word just, or spinning, something that just keeps moving and is more perpetual. Those could possibly be, depending on the context that we're working in, those might be great things to think about. To help you, David, with that even more, think about what an opposite would be. What would the opposite of with movement be? Maybe a pesante, heaviness. There aren't many words, there aren't many musical directions that wouldn't also mean a change in tempo. But if you think about the opposite of that movement, if it's holding back or pressing against us, or the music is pressing against a wall or something firm where it's not being allowed to move forward, can you experience the phrase that way? And then can you go back and experience the phrase with movement? And if we can find what the opposite is, I think that's also going to make it easier to identify, well, what did I do to change? And then how do I go back and show with instead of without? Yeah, great question, David. Let's see. Other questions? Usually we have such a plethora across the session. I don't think there were any other questions put in the chat yet. So if you've got one, Lori, you're up. Thanks for the question. A few tips on playing passages forte and fortissimo, especially legato melody lines. You're struggling to make those sound loud enough, but still beautiful. Okay. Let me see what I pull up here. Since I've been practicing this, maybe there'll be an opportunity in here to talk about this. Okay. Maybe people are familiar with this Chopin waltz. There aren't a lot of dynamics marked in here, but there are moments that we feel, maybe not fortissimo in this piece, but definitely forte, I'd say. Maybe let's take this little spot. Starting in... So, maybe starting at the beginning of, the beginning of this bar and going there. So the beginning, what bar is this? 78, 9, 80, 81. We're going to be piano, definitely, maybe pianissimo, depending on how we finished the previous phrase. And I would say that's getting close to, in this passage, forte playing in a very lyrical line. So, try it, Lori. Yeah, so you say, you mean you can play individual chords quite loud, but, a line feels more, like technically? You mean it technically feels more difficult to play? Or is the struggle... See, I keyed into what you said about loud enough but still beautiful. The tone quality. If it's a technical thing, I can answer... Okay, I'll answer a little bit of both. If it's a technical thing... we need a lot of finger activation in a lyrical line. So the best place to practice this is... Guess what? Scales. Cleophas, I would love to. So, Lori, if you could work on this with scales, and I would work detached scales to practice this. Let's take D flat major, since that's the key I'm in right now. Detached. I like using detached scale to work on articulation of the finger, but not purely with the finger itself. I don't think it's wise to lift and strike. And thankfully there's less of that going around online these days, but there are a lot of creators and channels out there that advocate for that. I don't think that's a good idea. So in order to train the fingers to be more articulate, I like to incorporate movement of the wrist. Because when we move a little bit further up the body, it's going to more naturally translate down and through the finger. Frederick, welcome. I will get to your question next, I think, Fred. So wrist rotation tips, yeah. Okay. Lori, so you said that striking motion you've tried every now and then, but it doesn't feel right. Don't try it every now and then. Come up with a good practice routine and regimen that you stick with and you work on every day. It's not going to come for you, and it's not going to be a part of your technique unless we work on it all the time and regularly. So, detached. And then as you speed that up, find the maximum tempo, depending on how fast you have your scales, find the maximum tempo that you can incorporate that wrist movement. That might be for everybody about there. When we get there, play the same thing, play it legato. And with time and practice, you notice that those dynamics were approximately the same. Detached, using wrist articulation, and then transitioning to just the fingers. Still very powerful, but I can't continue to use, at a certain point and at a certain tempo, I can't continue to use the wrist. And if we want to play something truly legato and lyrical and connected, we're probably also not going to want to use the wrist. For example, in this piece, playing through that, I would never want to practice it with all of that wrist articulation. That's why I'm going to relegate that practice to a scale, because I don't ever want to play that phrase so unmusically. But once that extra finger articulation is built in, then I'm going to have much more control about phrasing that and playing through a forte dynamic, but doing it really from the bridge down. So Lori, I think my biggest tip for you is don't just incorporate that motion from the wrist every now and then, but make it a part of your daily routine. In scales, until you can easily achieve forte plus without the wrist movement. Newt Boy, you say a sense of rotation. That really depends. It really depends. We can't use rotation all the time. And if we need to use sequential fingers, there can be so little rotation that we're not going to get the required force out of forearm rotation. Especially think about going from like 3 to 4 on 2 consecutive pitches. If I take the finger completely out of the equation and I play only with rotation, that's not very loud, because if I completely deactivate the fingers, that's what we get. That's just the product of the rotation. The faster I move, I have to so far over exaggerate the rotational element that I'd never use playing a passage that my finger goes completely sideways. I strike another key on the keyboard. So perhaps if I show you a top-down view of those 2 pitches that I'm kind of playing a trill on now, slow one. Sure, I could aid a little bit with rotation, and you see some of that happening. If I only play with fingers, I can still, though, I've trained those to be very active. So the rotation just means I have more control because I'm doing this. But if I deactivate the finger completely, that's all the rotation is actually giving to us, is that much volume. Think about it a different way. That much control over our volume. Yeah? So rotation can be great, especially going from, if we need a lot of force, moving from one side of the hand to the other, where we really can maximize the kinetic energy that we're harnessing by using rotation. But never does rotation take the place of learning how to really activate all the fingers. Yeah. It's an aid so that we don't have to activate maybe the last 5 or 10%, but we still need that finger activity. And I use that word activity instead of strength because the fingers don't really get stronger. There aren't muscles in the fingers. We can learn more, better coordination of how we use the tendons in the arm, right? But other than the thumb, the rest of the fingers we cannot build strength with them. I think it's more of a coordination thing. Carlos, hey, Carlos. Dith, I'm going to answer your question really quickly and then jump to Frederick's question. Dith, I think the answer to yours is very straightforward. You say, any tips for working past speed or tempo plateaus? Yes. Challenge yourself over the course of a practice session to increase past that plateau by 2 beats per minute to 4 beats per minute, something like that. So you can use a metronome for this. Better if you don't, but you can use a metronome to help give you that sense of time. Can you take something from, for example, 70 beats per minute, and over the course of practicing it 10 minutes, and I'm not talking about a whole piece, I'm talking like 4 measures. Can you take that from 70 beats per minute to 72 beats per minute to 74 beats per minute, maybe 75 or 6? So we slowly go across approximately a 10% increase in tempo, if we can get there. And if it's only a 5% increase in tempo, great, that's fine too. And do it in one practice session. Come back the next day, start in the same place, and work up that 5 or 10%. And we can use a very short span of notes to work on this. You might have to do it across the entire piece you're working on, but only work a small section at a time. Don't try to play the whole piece 5% faster, and don't jump to 5 or 10% faster right away. Do it in an increment that is so small that it's imperceptible. A lot of times, tempo plateaus, they could happen for a technical reason, but they can also happen because of an emotional reason. And the emotional part hampers the technique without us knowing. Because if we get scared or anxious about playing at a faster tempo, we tense up, the claw happens, and we might not even be aware that it's happened. So we want to trick the mind into thinking we've actually not done anything any different. We are, but you might not be able to perceive the difference between 70 beats per minute and 72 beats per minute, depending on your level of accomplishment. But the idea is it's such a small increase that it's imperceptible. So then your technique is actually going to stay. It's not going to get tight because we're anxious about playing it faster. It's going to be the same technical execution. Your brain is going to think, I'm doing the same thing, and it's not so much faster. And then before we know it, we've gone up 5% or 10%. And then when you go back to your original tempo, it'll feel very slow. Hopefully it'll feel very slow. The times that this doesn't work, if it's not working, you're probably taking too many notes at a time. So small chunks, a bar if you need to, 2 bars, 4 bars, and slowly build up. Phase, you say speed bursts like the guitar. I'm not familiar with those, but sure. Newt Boy, you say, Frederick, aren't you the one that has the etude? There's at least one etude that I know of that's in Dennis Zhdanov's course. And yes, it's the same Frederick. Frederick, let's go back to your question. So you say wrist rotation tips and exercise. Like in the pathétique, broken octaves. Fred, if your students haven't already, I really love the way rotation is introduced in the Hannon Faber books, and I think that can be great exercises to really work on that. And that's I do have a video here on it, but so one of the exercises is going between the 5th finger and the rest of the fingers. Of course, it's using a Hannon exercise. But unlike the original book, it's not about fingers only, which is how it was originally prescribed to be done, just for everybody else here on the channel. But rotation. And at a good clip, And if you have students playing like the Pathétique, this shouldn't be a problem after that many days. And then they can get a sense of, and that's not just the only exercise in that book. There might be around 10 pages of good rotational exercises. That's just the first one. And of course, it works both hands that way. And eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later with a student at that level, what we're keying into is this sensation of shaking. It's really just shaking. And it's very loose. You could even, let's take the Pathétique as an example. Can they just shake on the thumb? So instead of playing, instead of all of the tremolos, have them just shake on the thumb. And how about, can they pulse in time on the thumb, but pulsing not with the finger, but with rotation, where the hand doesn't need to be yet stretched. Of course, the octaves change there. And then my biggest tip about that piece is that it's truly shaking the hand. And if that movement and that shake is really comfortable and relaxed, we're at least going to achieve that tempo. Fred, what tempo, for example, in that piece that you gave, you've got at least one student working on it. Do you know the beats per minute that they're playing or that they're striving to play? Because the performances of the Allegro in that range wildly. Thanks, Dith. That's what I'm laughing at, your comment. Frederick, you say a conservative speed for now. Okay. Then if it's maybe here. This really start them on hand in Faber. This one. It's almost exactly the same execution as we need in the Beethoven, but instead of the hand being stretched across an octave, and unless they have quite large hands, they might feel that stretch. And if the octave is a stretch for them, that's going to tighten the rotational mechanism. So if we can learn freer rotation in a smaller position, the hand in Faber is only over a sixth between the fifth finger and the thumb, which is maybe, if it's a stretch at all, it's not very much for most hands. So I would start there, have them get the book anyway, and go through the whole thing. I think it would help their technique a ton. And if they already know it a lot, it would be a great just test to see, hey, can you play this one and this one and this one, and are we using the right kind of approach? Yeah, Frederick, it's it really should be introduced earlier. And I think actually Randall Faber intends it to be used with a level 3 student, a Faber level 3 student. That's his suggested time to begin incorporating it, which is quite early in learning. Hello, Donna. Yeah, Frederick, I have some pretty advanced students also that have, it's kind of amazing they can make it through the repertoire because there's a lot of tension. So the hand in Faber is great. So there it is for the left hand. And if they're executing it well, it's the same exact technique as this. just without the stretch to the octave. And Fred, you already know, don't push the tempo until like there is no chance that there's going to be tension. And that's why I asked about the tempo, because if somebody wants to play... that's really got to be dialed in. Because otherwise you're not going to make it just even through the second statement of that. Bedlington Groomer, hello. And you say, what does it look like when advanced students are playing with lots of tension? Let me give you the same example, the same passage from Beethoven. Let's see. There's a big difference in tone. My arms were really, really locked up. I'm still able to get through it because I'm still not as tense as some of my students, some of what I've seen from some students. But it's definitely not loose and free. That's the same tempo. And if you just look at the difference in body language between this, that's free and easy and relaxed and fluid, and this. Yeah. That's the biggest difference I can show myself personally. Joel Zorro said they make it look like it's hard work. Yeah. The biggest compliment I think any pianist could ever get, student included, is if somebody says that you make it look easy. If somebody says, or if they don't comment at all on how hard it was. If you ever get any comments about, and if somebody says this and they have good intentions, then, still take the positive from it. If you happen to be the recipient of a, wow, that was so hard and you did a great job, just take the positive at the time of the performance and then work on the other half, which is if they thought it was hard, there's a problem. And there's a problem with our technique and our execution. Unless you're playing the Liszt Transcendental Etudes, which look hard when everybody plays them. But even like the Chopin Etudes, the best pianists, many of them, they don't look like they're working very hard if they're played with excellent technique. Oh, thanks, Christopher. Oh, good. Hey, speaking of that video, the number 1 mistake in adult learners, I have the number 2 mistake that I see in adult piano learners coming out in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. So Frederick, I hope that answers your question about that rotational technique. So hand and Weber and some shaking. It's not if you're familiar with like the vibrato method, it's not that vibratoing on a single key. It's not that, but doing more of that forearm rotation without letting the thumb release, for example, for that piece in particular. Oh, Germicidal said, simplicity is the supreme task. You might be right. I don't know that Chopin quote, but that sounds like Chopin. Oh, yes, Johan, you say some of the concerti or some of the works in the Clyburn competition. I'd say the competition overall plus the concerti. Yeah, they're difficult. And when you're playing maybe the most extreme examples in the repertoire, yeah, they're going to look difficult no matter who's playing them. The Pathétique Sonata played at a crazy fast clip, like some pianists do. It is very, very difficult. It's still not a Liszt etude. And played at, I think, a more appropriate tempo for a Beethoven piece and from that period. Not double beat or anything like that, but just something that's not flying off the rails, that's actually grounded, still allegro and still spirited, but has some foundation to it, is much, much simpler than some of the hardest repertoire that's out there. Oh, Jill Zorro, great. I'm glad. Yeah, Molly's book, Learn Faster, Perform Better, is a great, it's a great read. Yeah. Newt Boy, I appreciate that. Yeah. Thanks for your vote of confidence in my channel. Let me see. Did I miss a question? Oh, Seth's question. How do you know when to move the body to the left or the right for better alignment, like in the middle of playing something? So great. Seth, that's going to be, I think, the last question we take today. And Frederick, to quickly answer your follow-up here, I find his music more awkward than the big romantics? I find most of the German and Austrian composers more awkward. So I would include Bach, playing the advanced Bach repertoire and learning those intricate finger movements just does not seem as pianistic as Chopin and Liszt. It's just very different. Beethoven is different in its own way, and I would agree, it is fairly pianistic, but less so than Chopin, for example. And Brahms is another example where the writing it's beautiful, but it's not pianistic at all. I think it speaks to how Brahms thought about music, and he made it work on the piano for one person, but I think he had larger ensembles in mind when he was composing. And the translation is stuff that just feels sometimes extremely awkward. And yet, Chopin and Liszt can write these intricate cadenzas and octave passages, and they might be difficult, but they're never awkward. Okay, so let's see. Oh, Nico, that is very funny about Bach, with a dozen children and still being such a prolific composer. Let's see. Seth, you had said alignment, moving the body. Let me give you a general rule or two. Yeah. So if you find yourself, for example, as the right hand ascends, and you find you're going further and further, you need to go further and further, and this starts happening, we are out of alignment. There isn't a perpendicular angle. There's not a right angle between the hand and the keys, more like that, which I would shift my body a little bit, but I'm talking into the microphone. So let me show you again. Here is misalignment. Here is somewhat aligned, but by putting the elbow out, and there's not a big change from this angle if I lean, but let me show you the difference from the side. So here's the same position, out of alignment, I'm crooked, and then in alignment, now the elbow is sticking out way too far. And then if I lean, the elbow comes back in, and it's much more comfortable. So as you're looking for this alignment, and we can't always achieve it, there might be a hand that gets a little compromised. But if we're at a more extreme end of the piano, so sticking with the right hand in this position, that's not very extreme. Let's go further. So up here, that is an opportunity to lean to the right, because unless we need to reach for something very low as well, if we don't need to do that, lean to accommodate the hand that's misaligned. And if we do need to be playing at the extremes of the piano like this simultaneously, well, we're going to compromise and make both of them work. That's not going to happen until very, very advanced repertoire, though. And you're not going to have really intricate, usually, you're not going to have really intricate work in both hands. So, I don't have a particular measure example from like the Liszt Sonata. But if there is something where there's a big octaves in the bass or something working down here on the left, but there's a cadenza or flighty passage work in the right hand, I'm going to compromise the alignment of the left because I'm going to be able to play octaves and navigate that much more easily out of alignment. And then I'm going to be able to play some crazy fast, whatever the fingers need to do up here. If those fingers are out of alignment, it's going to be awful. So I need to move that way. And then the left hand just does what it needs to do. And it might be way skewed. That's okay. So we're leaning to accommodate the hand that is the more technical one. Yeah. If we have a place where we can't otherwise. And I don't think... there's not that often that happens until really advanced repertoire. So, Seth, I hope that answers your question a bit. Look for those moments if the hand is not rotated, but just not perpendicular to the keys. And in order to make it perpendicular, you have to swing the elbow out. That's awkward as well, and that's going to inhibit good technical execution in the fingers. That's a moment that we lean to accommodate. And I'm showing that just for the one hand, but that would really be true for both hands. C Drive says, so yeah, Seth, thanks. And C Drive, you said, would Chopin get past the first round in his own competition? Let's wrap up with that. What do you all think? Would Chopin have gotten past round one? Would he have made it past a recorded round in his own competition, the Chopin competition? Or, speaking of the competition that happened more recently, would Chopin have gotten past, would he have made the live rounds of the Clyburn? Newt Boy, you say probably not. What do I think Chopin would think of his own competition? I don't think he'd be very happy. Well, let's say before he was famous, let's say Chopin is, he would have had to be, usually the cutoff is 18 years old these days, 18 to like mid-30s for a competition like the Clyburn, most of the professional competitions. And Chopin, by the time he was 19, he wrote his etudes already. So let's take Chopin when he was 14 years old. And let's say he could have entered the Clyburn today. So before he maybe had written so much of his repertoire, but was still a fantastic artist. Yes, so Fred, you bring up something very important. By today's pianistic standards, he was too quiet playing. Yep. Oh, and you, Fred, I didn't see this, but you said depressingly, probably not. Yep. I think that's true. So some of the standards that I perceive competitions are judged by these days are this almost superhuman technical perfection and sometimes at the detriment of artistry and musicality. And also, big competitions, you definitely get judged on the size of sound you produce and the warmth of it. And I think it's a strange age to live in where that is still judged, I think, because so much of classical music is consumed via recording. And anybody who's playing that repertoire that any of the great competitors are playing, B. Booker, yeah, hey, thanks for being here. Everybody's got a pretty great tone and a pretty great sound already. So, but I do know from personal experience that you get judged based on how massive of a sound you can produce on the instrument. And especially if everybody is competing on the same instrument, you can't really hear this on a recording or on any of the live streams if you listen to any of the Clyburn rounds. You can hear it more so if you're live in the hall, where a competitor might walk out and they play stuff and their sound is just, it envelops the whole room. And someone else walks out and they play the same instrument, maybe the same repertoire, and you kind of have to lean forward to hear what they're playing. And yet it sounds like they're still playing forte. It sounds like both of them played forte or fortissimo, but one envelops you in like a blanket, and the other one you have to lean forward for. Those competitors that you have to lean forward for usually don't make it very far because they're being judged on, are they going to be able to tour with playing concerti with orchestra, and are they going to be really impactful, and can they fill a 2,000 and 3,000 seat hall? Well, Chopin never played in a hall that size. He played mostly house concerts. Halls in Europe, even the big opera halls aren't usually that size. So, yes, speaking of what Chopin was great at, he was a master of the piano dynamics, from pianissimo through piano and mezzo piano, and he could shade and color tone in so many unique and beautiful ways, apparently. And there was a lot written about that when he was playing. Did people hear him play forte very often? No. And how we interpret Chopin and you hear forte played today would probably not at all be what he would have interpreted his own music as. It would be a completely different dynamic if he played it. But going back to what Frederick, you said, he would have been too quiet. And yes, Benedikte Grummer, you said he was ill most of his adult life. I can't remember at what point he began to have his issues. But he was kind of a frail man. So thankfully, the world wasn't like that when he was alive. Otherwise, we may not have known or know today any of his music, which would be a real shame. So thankfully, let's turn this around into a positive thing. We have Chopin and we have his music, and competitions didn't exist back then. And Rhodesy, how would his technique be compared to competition pianists today? That's really hard to say because his technique has fueled so much around piano pedagogy, even still today. I don't think he would have looked remarkably different. So, Frederick, top 3 Chopin pieces, I think. The Second Sonata, the Fourth Ballade, and the Opus 27 number 1 Nocturne. I think those are my top 3. Oh, and on that note, thanks everybody for being here. Yes, I do need to run because I am going to see the people at Steinway in Denver. So it was great to see all of you here today. The next live stream is in 2 weeks on the 25th of June. Remember, you can always submit something, like we talked to Nathanael earlier in the stream today. You can always submit a video of your playing, and we'll take a look at it. So there's directions for how to do that, I believe, in the description down below. Thanks, everybody, again, for being here. And, hope to see you around the channel on some of the videos that are posting. Video this Friday is all about pedaling, really complex pedaling stuff. So hope you'll check it out. And I will see you next time. Practice smarter,